Thank you very much, everyone. Welcome to City of STEM 2021, and I am super thrilled to be able to have this next conversation. Again, my name is Ben. I'm the president of the Columbia Memorial Space Center, so therefore, I'm a big fan of space. And I'm super excited to welcome our next guest, Garrett Reisman, astronaut and educator. Garrett, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Ben. Great to be with you. It's a pleasure.
Thanks a lot. I just confessed that I've wanted to be an astronaut since I was a little kid. That's kind of what got me.
Yeah, me too.
So, all right. So you actually made it. So that's great. Tell me, what inspired you to be an astronaut in the first place?
I was always fascinated by everything that had to do with flying, either in airplanes or in space. I've read every book in my elementary school library about rockets and airplanes, but the thing was, I never really expected to actually become an astronaut. So I didn't think it was going to happen.
Okay.
Mostly because when I was a kid, I was watching films of the Apollo missions.
Yeah.
And those guys were all test pilots. And
right.
The way my career was going, I had a mom who's scared of flying. I don't mean like flying on like a space shuttle or an X-15. I mean like flying on United. So the thought of like me becoming a test pilot was just not going to happen.
Right.
So I was always interested in STEM fields. I was always interested in all the sciences, math. And if you asked me what I was going to be when I grew up when I was in high school, I probably would have said, doctor or engineer or scientist or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. And then, all right, so fast forward. So that's funny about your mom, I have to say. My mom encouraged me to be an astronaut. She was discouraging me. I remember she was like, you don't want to be an artist. There's no future in that. But she was me being an astronaut. All right, so I guess, fast forward. Here you are, you do school, and so you must have had some sort of moment where you decided to apply to be an astronaut. What the heck?
Yeah, so like everything changed when I was in college, near the end of my undergraduate years. Okay. When I got a hold of some of the bios, some of the NASA astronauts that had just been selected for the space shuttle, and I realized they weren't all scientists. I'm sorry, they weren't all test pilots. They were scientists, they were engineers, medical doctors, and all of a sudden I had this kind of eureka moment when I realized that, hey, maybe what I was doing would actually take me down a path that could get me there. And that changed everything, really.
That's super cool. I remember, I remember that book, Entering Space, came out when I was in school, and I think Joe Allen or something like that. I remember reading that he was just a physicist. He was a scientist, and he was able to go up in the shuttle. And that's kind of what was inspiring to me, is that, I could just do what I love to do in school and then maybe be an astronaut.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes to show, we're talking about this a lot these days, is the importance of representation. Yeah. And until you can see somebody like you doing something, it's hard to believe it's within the realm of possibility. So until I saw another engineer, another scientist, you need to see somebody that looks like you doing something in order to really convince yourself, I think, that it can happen. And that's really powerful. And it's something that a lot of us take for granted, I think.
Listen, I totally agree. But part of the reason why we're focusing on women in STEM and diversity in STEM today is to be able to get that across. Actually, one of our first speakers of the day, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, wrote a book about all of the diversity that's been in STEM the entire time, but that we just haven't seen, and how important it was to him to do that. It also kind of connects up with a question I was going to ask, just about like what's going on in space and the future of space, and at least when I was growing up, I want to think, we may have had similar experiences, but it seemed like you had to go to the astronaut program and do all this training and all that kind of stuff, which is still there, but there were a lot of steps. It seems like there's a more democratization of being an astronaut on the horizon with SpaceX and stuff. Could you talk about what's the future of space flight these days, and how open is it going to be for everybody?
The door is cracked open, but to be honest with you, right now anyway, it's just a crack, because the people that are going are people that are able to buy the ticket, and it's not cheap. Okay,
that's true.
Tens of millions of dollars in cash to buy these tickets, right? So there's not a whole lot of people that can do that, but it's coming. All right, so it's I know that might be frustrating for people who don't have $60 million laying around in their slush fund, but the thing is this: it was the same way with the airlines. If you go way back to the beginning of the airline industry, the people that can afford to fly in these rickety crates, these like Ford Tri-Motors that would take you, from like Burbank to Vegas or something like that. They were millionaires and movie stars, and they would dress in black tie to get on these things, right? And so that's where we're all right. But today we have Southwest, right?
True,
and everybody can go pretty much.
Right.
So it's going to be that way in space. It's just going to take a little bit of time. In the beginning, it's going to be very expensive. It gets a little bit more reasonable if you're looking just to go on a suborbital flight, straight up, straight down.
Sure.
Then you're talking about $250,000, so about a couple $100,000. Still a lot of money, but that's better than tens of millions, right? So
true.
There are opportunities coming, and that's starting this year. And the price is going to come down. There's going to be more and more opportunities. If you don't have all that money lying around, the other thing you could do is apply to NASA and do it the old-fashioned way. That's still an option.
Well, that's exciting. And I didn't even I said astronaut Garrett Reisman, but you are the very recently former director of spaceflight operations for SpaceX, which is cutting edge, really leading the way in 21st century space. So from that perspective, what do you think is really exciting right now? Like right now, not far in the future when everybody can afford a ticket, but right now, what's going on in space that's getting you excited?
Space right now is more exciting than any time in my life. You have to go all the way back to when I was an infant and the Apollo program was still going on. We're reaching that level of excitement and advancement, which is super exciting. We went for a long time where things were progressing, but at a relatively stately pace. Mm-hmm. And now we're seeing a rapid pace of technological change, a lot of innovation, a lot of new vehicles coming down the line being designed. We get to see starships trying to figure out how to land on like a weekly basis. At the same time, NASA's got their big giant SLS rocket that they're testing. Right. And Blue Origin is going to do some amazing things very soon too with their new Glenn. It's a giant rocket that they're about to start testing.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. So all these, there's all these different places, and then there's all these other startups that are trying to get in on the act too. So you got like Rocket Lab and Relativity Space and Firefly and Virgin Orbit. So it's a super busy time. Also, money is flooding into investors are hungry, really, really hungry to fund a lot of these startups. So there's a lot of activity. It's a great time to be graduating from college with an aerospace engineering degree. There's a lot of really exciting opportunities out there that when I was graduating from undergrad, that those were few and far between.
Yeah, and I have to say too, it's a great time to be running a space center too, because everybody's interested to find out more about it. Speaking of being an aerospace engineer, so you moved sort of away, maybe emeritus role at SpaceX. So what are you doing now?
Right. So at SpaceX, I have a kind of an arrangement there. I'm no longer an employee there. I'm kind of a consultant. They give me a title of senior advisor. Okay. So when there's something I can help them with, they'll reach out on occasion. But it's a pretty low level of effort, to be honest. My day job now is working at USC. So that's why I got the hat. See the hat?
Nice.
So I'm a professor. I'm a university professor. I'm teaching graduate engineering classes. I have 3 of them that I developed, all in different aspects of human spaceflight.
That's super. So, all right, USC, University of Southern California, you can take a course from an astronaut, which is pretty awesome. So on that note then, because City of STEM really is about like STEM education and all that, what do you think is most important? What would you like to tell the world, or at least a bunch of young kids maybe, about STEM education? Like, what should they apply themselves with? What do we need as a society to help with that?
Well, before I do, one other thing about, yes, you can come and have an astronaut as a professor, but I just want to warn everybody out there, I'm not an easy grader. Right? My tests are hard. I don't go easy on you.
Are they physical and mental, like your training?
No. No, I don't. I don't put them in a centrifuge or anything. The school won't let me do that.
Awesome.
Too much liability, I think. But no, it's just. But STEM. So STEM is. Yeah. Look. The STEM fields are the foundation. Everybody that is helping us with human spaceflight. The people that make the Starship fly, the people that are working in Blue Origin, working on New Shepard and figuring out how to launch and land rockets on their tails and get us back to the moon with the Artemis program, or get us onto Mars eventually. Mm-hmm. They all are people who are good at STEM, okay? Because that's the basic fundamental. If you want to know how either to become an astronaut or to someday become the first person to go to Mars, and for young kids that ask me that question, I tell them, well, it all starts right now in your STEM classes. So when you're studying science, when you're studying math, that's astronaut training. You might not realize it when you're sitting there and learning your fractions or how to do long division, but that is the first step. And all that stuff you learn is the tools that you need to be an astronaut, to be an engineer, to be a scientist, to design rockets, to work at SpaceX. That's what you need. So do that and do it well.
That's awesome. Well, good. Yeah. And it does start early. That's fantastic. It kind of made me think a little bit, because we were talking about the future of space and what's going on and the investment. What is driving a lot of that? What is driving this? And so that the kids who are studying STEM now kind of know what's moving this stuff forward. Back in the 60s, it was, hey, let's go to the moon or let's beat the Russians or something like that. What's so promising about space that so many people are starting to invest in it and spend a lot of brain power on it?
Well, there are new the interest in space has led to a decreased cost of access to space. So we've chopped a zero or more off the price tag of how much it costs per pound to send something into space, because our rockets we have now are much more efficient, are reusable, and so the prices come down, and that has enabled all kinds of commercial opportunities. But the interesting thing to me is a lot of this commercial space that people talk about, or new space or whatever, but this kind of paradigm shift that we saw with SpaceX and Blue Origin and these other new space companies, a lot of it is really driven still by Apollo, which is really what's fascinating to me. Because if you look at what's motivating Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos of Blue Origin and Richard Branson with Virgin, they all felt somewhat cheated in a way. They all felt like, well, we went to the moon when they were kids, right? Mm-hmm. So of course we'd all be living on Mars by now,
sure,
right? Or we'd all have colonies on the moon, or giant space stations orbiting. They all felt like we were on this trajectory, and then it stopped,
right?
And they didn't get the results that their expectations weren't met, and so they decided to do something about it. Being the kind of people that they are, they're very driven, very determined, and they have a lot of resources. So they're pouring their resources their time, their money, and their effort into trying to make that dream of Apollo fulfilled, which is really why they started these companies and why we're where we are today.
That's super cool. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm sitting at the Space Center, and we're where the Apollo spacecraft were designed and built, and we have a good relationship with a lot of the ex-engineers who worked on that program, and they talk about how that day basically when Apollo funding was kind of cut, and not that they didn't like working on shuttle, because that was done here too, but that really they had so many things on the drawing boards, and they had projected out so far in advance, and it all just kind of like poofed away after a congressional hearing or something like that.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, it was very expensive.
Well, true.
We were spending a lot of money. People complain about NASA's budget now, but NASA's budget now is less than 0.5% of the federal budget. So every dollar of taxpayer money, less than 0.5 of 1 penny goes to NASA. And some people think that's still too much. Yeah. Back during Apollo, we were much, much higher. So I understand the realities, but at the same time, we knew the potential. Apollo opened our eyes to what we could do. And we're still trying to get it done.
Well, on that note about sort of what was going to happen after Apollo, I want to ask you about another little sideline career you have. You're involved with the TV show For All Mankind, which is sort of like an alternate history of what would happen if Apollo kept going, basically. How did you get involved with that?
That's a long story, but it has to do with the fact that when I was up in space, they asked me what celebrities I might want to have a chat with for like a morale boost. And I was a big fan of the show Battlestar Galactica. So I asked to talk to the creators of the show, Ron Moore and David Icke. And we had this really cool Zoom session, basically from the space station, where I asked them all about the Battlestar Galactica show. They asked me all about flying in space, and Ron stayed in touch, and he and some of the other Battlestar Galactica people came to my last launch. They invited me up to the set. I was like an extra in the final episode of Battlestar, and I got to meet everybody, and we stayed in touch. And then when Ron had an idea for a new TV show, he came and visited me at SpaceX, and we had lunch. And he told me, and what was really interesting is what really was a creative spark, or what was driving Ron Moore to create this TV show, is exactly the same thing I was just talking about with Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, everybody else. Is this idea of what Apollo could have been. And so he wanted to make a TV show that said, well, what if Apollo kept going?
Right.
And he felt that like loss or being cheated out of his expectations, just like those other men did. And so that really was the impetus behind the show. And so the show, it's on Apple TV Plus, and season 2 is airing right now. We're about halfway through. Season 3 is already in the works. But the premise of the show is that the Soviets beat the Americans to the moon, and instead of Neil Armstrong being the first person to walk on the moon, it was Alexei Leonov, a Soviet cosmonaut. And then at that point, our history diverges. It becomes an alternate history and a parallel universe kind of thing. And we explore what would have happened differently if we kept competing with the Russians and kept going.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's really great, and it's really. I mean, I feel like it's really scientifically accurate and all that stuff. It's super cool, and Battlestar Galactica was great, so I would expect nothing different. Hey, I got one more question. I actually have 2 questions from the audience, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So really, should have asked this also from the beginning. What's it like to be in space? Most of us haven't been there.
That's all right.
Not missing much. All right, we'll stay on the ground. Sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, basically every question I ever get asked is some variation on that question. What's it like, right? And I get it. I understand, because it's such a crazy experience, and that there haven't been enough lucky people who've gotten to experience it. So it is extraordinary. I mean, there's so many different aspects of it, but to me, what and the highlights included launching, obviously landing, but especially doing a spacewalk. I did 3 spacewalks, and for kind of a life experience, it's hard to beat that. That was just remarkable. But on a day-to-day basis, because you don't get to do those things every day that I just mentioned, it's the floating in microgravity that's really makes it magical, and changes your whole environment. It changes the world you live in is completely different without gravity. And at first it's strange and surreal and shocking. And after a while you get used to it, and then it gets really magical. It becomes it's like you're a Superman. You can fly.
That's awesome.
It's fantastic.
That's super cool. Yeah, someday I need to pick your brain about that a little bit more too. What's so cool about a spacewalk and all that kind of stuff. But Lori Boyce, who's a 5th grade student, is asked you, and we kind of covered a little bit this before, but she's 5th grade, and maybe we can be a little bit more detailed. Is how do you become an astronaut? What's the process?
Well, you have to apply. Okay. That's the first step, and that actually, I don't say that too lightly. It's not. I'm not being that flippant about that. It's a lot of people are scared to apply, and the only way you will never become an astronaut is if you don't apply.
That's right.
Okay, so you got to get past that first hurdle. Apply early, apply often. Do excel at something in the STEM fields. There's no one path to becoming an astronaut. There are many, many different paths, you could do most anything that's related to STEM and become an astronaut. We've had a veterinarian become an astronaut. We've had biologists and chemists and engineers of all different kinds, computer scientists. So there's no one right way. And I should mention, there's also the military route. You can go off and go join the military and become either a test pilot or special operations, or there's a bunch of different areas in there that you could fill. There's paths that way too. But you have to do it really well. So you got to find something you love doing, because nobody ever does anything extraordinary when they're working at something that they're just kind of about, right? So you got to find something that really excites you, that makes you want to work hard, and then go do it really, really well, and then fill out the form. Now, if you want to know more, I actually just this week put a video up on my YouTube channel where I talked to a high school student, a college student, and then a senior scientist at JPL, who are all applying or want to become astronauts. And we had this Zoom discussion where I gave them about an hour's worth of advice. So if you want the long version of this, go to GarrettReisman.com.
Okay.
Click on the video tab, or just go to my YouTube channel, and you'll see down there one of the options will be how to become an astronaut, and just watch that video, and it gives you a lot of info.
Awesome. Well, Space Center Director, here I go. Well, hey, I can't thank you enough for doing this. I know we've talked in the past a few times. I really appreciate it. And I just want to tell the City of STEM audience that, Garrett is here in Southern California. This is another, this is another charming aspect of being in LA and being in STEM, is that we've got access to fantastic people like Garrett, and you can take a class. Just got to apply to USC first. Maybe you get audit, but Garrett, thank you so much for being here. I can't wait till we talk again, and good luck with everything. Thank you.
Thanks, Ben. It was great to be with you. Good luck.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.